This is Gemara Pesachim Daf Sadi Test. This is Sunday's Daf. This is the Daf for after Purim in America, but which will be Purim, the final day of Purim here in Yerushalayim. Hence why we're getting this year up a bit early. Today's year should be a special schos. Refuah Shleim of Chaim Zemoshe ben Asiris Yudemir ben Yakir Manu Vega Chaim ben Sarshal Stephen Izil Sar Bas Gnendel Ita Basin Bas Chaisa Yisrael ben Mindel as the parents of Shavalei Shem Bas Naami Shafiq of Shirchana Faltavini Teriva Shmuel ben Tila Daniel ben Chan Rizal Milchai Bas Minali Bracha Bas Tavia Musa Daniel Edel Bashina Mindel Simcha Tovia Bas Avigal Fashas Vi ben Fega Devoyer Michel ben Sipir Natatheli Yehuva B'Say Sharchali Yisrael as well as a special schos zivug from Miriam Bas Esther Sheindel, as well as Etalea Bas Ita. We pick it up in the bottom of Sadi Chesam and Beis, finishing off this 9th parak and concluding the portion of Pesachim called Pesach Sheni, which will end effectively the Kachim part of this Masechta, and then take us in the Arvei Pesachim, which really is the perfect achana for Pesach, as we're just in the Shleishim Yom, 30 days before Yantif. So let's begin. The Gemara on the bottom of Sadi Chesam and Beis says, Tanu Rabbanan, Amar Lahen, you tell them, Va'amru Loi, and they tell you, what was the halacha? Eichel min Arishain. Loi Amar Lahem, Loi Amar Loi, Inach Rayin Zelazeh. We had two different cases in the Mishnah. And again, the case of the Mishnah is that the Pesach is lost and one of the members of the group are going to find that Pesach. So we had two different cases. In one case, you told him to go do it and he told you. In the other case, no one said anything. And ironically, what came out was when you said nothing, you're not a cry for each other. And then what comes out is, if yours is first grade, if his is first, it's good for him. And everyone is on their own. Whereas in the first case, where you said to him, then it comes out that potentially can mess you up, that if you're going to be first, then he's not going to be able to get involved, and vice versa. So as we move along to Sadi Tes, Amud Aleph, the final Amud of this parak, says the Gemara, Mikan Amru Chachamim. From here in the Mishnah, the Chachamim said, Yafa Shtika Lechachamim. Silence is golden. Silence is wonderful for the sages. Kal V'chaymer L'Tipshin. Certainly for someone who's a tipish, someone who's not so smart. Shnemar, as the Pasuk says, Evel Macharish, foolish man is when foolish. The fool, when he is silent, chacham hi chashev, is considered wise. Meaning, even when someone who's a fool, he's not so intelligent. When he's silent, he's considered wise. Obviously, this is a play on the Mishnah. The Mishnah was a technicality, but the technicality came out that because you said nothing, it ends up being better for you. The golden rule of silence, yafa shtika lichachamim, rule that we've seen in Perek Yavis as well. The tremendous maila to be able to keep quiet. Shnayim sheniz arvu b'schayim, and we concluded the Mishnah with the case that two people, the Karban Pesach, got swapped with each other. Now, the important rule that we learned in the Mishnah was that the Karban Pesach can never have a moment of time that has no one on the Karban. If there's a moment of time that this Karban is ownerless, it gets messed up, which was the reason why we spoke out in the Mishnah that you have to take another person within your group, and then you either another person from the other group, case number one, or a person from the street, case number two, and thereby, then you make the Tanai that if this is Karban is mine, is great, but if the other Karban was mine, then I want to remove myself in that Karban. So at that moment that you remove yourself in that Karban, that split second, you can run into an issue, because that Karban might have no Bailam on it. So what do we say? So we said that's the reason why you add another person onto the Karban, to ensure that the Karban is never ownerless. So says the Gemara, Limas Nizan, to like your Rebbe Yehuda. That rule that we just spoke out, that runs contrary to the opinion of Rebbe Yehuda, the Tanya learned to the Reis. That if the house literally is decreased, is less than from having the animal, Malamid, we darsh this pasuk. Shemismatin b'holchen b'lvad sheyechem nechabura kayam devir Rav Yehuda. Yehuda says you always have to have one of the original members of the group. So our Mishnah is not like that Rav Yehuda, because in our Mishnah, was it one of the original members of the group? No, we said in the case of the Mishnah, you could take someone from the street and add him on, and that's okay. But Rav Yehuda held that no, it has to always be one of the original members. So our Mishnah is not like Rav Yehuda. Rav Yosi, I no, as long as you don't leave the Pesach as it is. Answers the Gemara, no, we can really say the Mishnah's Rav Yehuda as well. Kivan Damar Rav Yehuda. Since Rav Yehuda says, Ein Shechtan is a Pesach al Yachid, a concept that we've seen that you're not allowed to shech the Karban Pesach for one person. And in our Mishnah, the case was that you shechted it for one person. So what must be your das? Since you cannot do it for one person, and you did, what must be that you had in your mind? It must be you didn't really shech it for one person. You had intent, you have das to add someone on. And then when you add on that person from the shuk, he's considered as if he was always involved. He's considered as if he was Echamei Chabura, because that was your intent in your das at the time that you shechted the Karban. Therefore, says the Gemara, the Mishnah is not necessarily not like Rav Yehuda, who says Rav Yechon, we can make the Mishnah fit even with Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav Ashi, Masisanami Deka. We bring a proof that this is the correct way of learning the Mishnah. The Ketani, the Mishnah said, "V'chein chamish chaburoi shel chamisha chamisha." 5 groups of 5, chamisha shel chamisha. In only 5 groups of 5, avul shel chamisha ve'arba aloi. But if you have 5 groups, and one of them only has 4 people, then not. What's the reason? Because then what's going to happen is you're not going to have someone left in the group. Because if there's 5 groups, so each person goes to another group, and then everyone mixes with each other, and then it's great. But if one group only has 4 people, what are you going to have? You're going to end up with, let's say you have 5 groups, 5, 5, 5, 5, and 4. So what are you going to do? When everyone intermingles with each other, you're going to be left with 4 groups. 4 groups, and one of those groups is potentially not going to have every person on it. So we see clearly in the Mishnah Shema Mina that the case must have been that you had intent to add another person on from the Shuk. And with that, we conclude this parak. Hadron Allah Mishayatame Uslik Allah Masech Sheni. As we keep on pointing out, this is why it's called Pesachim, 2 Pesachs. As there were 2 portions to the Masechta. This effectively concludes section number 2, and the last parak is part of section number 1. We should do a wonderful chazara, and we should be zeicha to learn many more parakim and Amir Tashem Mesechta is together. As we move along to Arvei Pesachim. Well, wonderful siyata d'shmaya. Not only that we're finishing the Masechta within the week of Pesach, but the final parak, which is all about in Yani Seder Matzah Mar, as we'll see in a few moments. We're learning right here basically 1 month. We're recording this actually exactly 1 month on Yud Daled Adar, 1 month before the Pesach, but Mir Tashem, it's Sunday's daf, which is a few days in. Let's get involved. Says the Mishnah, Arvei Pesachim, on Erev Pesach, Somach lemincha lo yeyachel. As it gets close to mincha, you're not allowed to eat. Le'achel adam ad shetishrach until it gets dark. Afilu even ani shabi yisrael le'achel ad sheyesef. Even an ani is not allowed to eat until he reclines and he has his seder. V'lo yipaschu lo me'ar b'kayv shel yayin. And furthermore, even every person in Klal Yisrael needs to have 4 cups of wine. V'afilu min hatamcho. Even an ani who's so destitute that he collects from the tamcho, which was the communal collection to give out food, they were required to give him food. As you see on the side of your page over here, there's Rashi and there's Rashbam. Rashi. So this is how the whole parak has its Rashbam as well as Rashi. So if you look at the Rashbam, when the Rashbam says V'lo yipaschu, in the Rashbam starts 2 lines into the white lines, but it's all the way at the end, right before the Gemara. The Rashbam is what points out over here that Im loy naslu gabi saka yimchar es malbushay o yilve o yasker es hatzmui b'shvil yayin la'arba kaises. Rashbam points out the extremity, how far it goes to make sure that you have the daled kaises 4 cups of wine, which the Rashbam as well as Rashi point out, which everyone knows is connected, is reminiscent of the 4 lashonos of Geula. But it's so important that number 1, the ani collects is from the tamchoy, but number 2, the Rashbam is pointing out, and let's say not, he's even going to have to sell his clothing, he's going to have to take out money, he's going to have to borrow, he's going to have to rent himself out in order to get the most incredible Dali the Concise to be yet to the mitzvah, as we'll learn more about in this parak. Says the Gemara, my Aryam Arvei Pesachim. Why is it that where it goes about Erev Pesach, the Mishnah taught us the first din, and Erev Pesach you're not allowed to eat tzamach lemincha. Ask the Gemara, afilu Arvei Shabbos v'yom tovim nami. Even every Erev Shabbos and Erev Yontif you're not allowed to eat. Which also is wonderful siyat Shmaya. Purim in America was on Friday, and everyone was busy discussing what's the appropriate time to have your Purim Suda because of this halacha. This halacha that you're not allowed to have a Suda going into Shabbos, which is halacha in every week of the year, even on Purim. That was the reason why everyone tried to have the Suda earlier. If you were unable, there were special Ateirim because Purim was a mitzvah. But this is the halacha, says the Gemara, every Erev Shabbos in Yontif, you're not allowed to have a Suda as it gets close to Shabbos in Yontif. The Tanya you've learned to the Brisa. You're not allowed to eat on Erev Shabbos in Yontif from Mincha onward. Mincha Ketana and Mincha Gdela is about 12:30. Mincha Ketana is about 2.5 hours later. 9-10 hours into the day, you're not allowed to eat from that point onward. Why not? So you have an appetite for Shabbos, you have an appetite for the Suda. Rav Yehuda, that's what Rav Yehuda says. Rav Yehuda Amer, no. You're allowed to eat all the way until Shabbos. So asks the Gemara, a fundamental shayla. The Mishnah made it sound like this is a Pesach thing. Erev Pesach you can't eat. What do you mean? You can't eat every Erev Pesach and Erev Yantif. Answers the Gemara 2 terutzim. Amar Avuna Light Sricha Elul Rav Yosi. We're going going to opinion of Rav Yosi. Rav Yosi holds normally on every Erev Shabbos, on every Erev Yontif, you're allowed to eat until it gets dark. Honey mili b'Erev Shabbos is Yom Tovim. That's only Erev Shabbos and Yontif. Avol b'Erev HaPesach mishum chiyuva de matzah moide, because the chiyuva matzah of Yosi is moide on a normal Erev Shabbos, on a normal Erev Yontif. Rav Yosi says no big deal, eat all the way until Shabbos and Yontif. But on Erev Pesach, Rav Yosi is moide. Rav Yosi admits that you're not allowed to eat. Why? A special chiyuv, the chiyuva de matzah, the special chiyuv that you have to have an appetite when you're eating the matzahs, which the Rashbam over here points out, we learn out from a pasuk that Leila Rishon Chayva eating matzah the first night is a biblical obligation. Be'erev toichlu matzah is something that we've seen already in this Masechta. That was teretz number one, the teretz of Rav Huna. Comes on the Gemara, Papa Amar, second teretz Afilu Tema Rav Yehuda. I can even explain that the Mishnah is going with Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda holds normally in every Erev Shabbos you're not allowed to have a Suda. So what's special at Erev Pesach? Ha, some be'Erev Shabbos Yom Tovim minha mincha u'lemaylo. On every Erev Shabbos, it's forbidden to have a su'uda. It's forbidden to have a meal from mincha ketana and onward. But samuch lemincha shari, samuch always means a half hour. So a half hour prior, that half hour before the 10th hour, that is when it's going to be permitted to have a su'uda on a regular Erev Shabbos in Yontif. However, al Erev Pesach afilu samuch lemincha nami aser. That is how we can reconcile the Mishnah, even with the opinion of Rav Yehuda. And let's just point out that this halacha of not having a su'uda on Erev Shabbos, halacha l'maisa, is not really dependent about washing or not washing. That's not the detail that we have to be concerned about. It's the detail of how much food you're going to eat. You have to have an appetite when you're going to Shabbos, and the Pesachim explain that you can't have a suda that's not a ruggle suda, not a normal meal. Which is, just give a simple example. If someone has pizza every single day for lunch, washes and has 2 slices of pizza, he's allowed to do that on a Friday as well. Because that's his regular meal, the regular thing that you eat, you're allowed to eat. You're not allowed to have more than a Suda Harigila, but there's a mitzvah, there's a special mitzvah to mimayit and always have a little bit less on a Friday so that you could enter into Shabbos with a special appetite. So again, we had two different Mishnah with the Braisa. We had Rav Huna's explanation that said that the Mishnah is going with the opinion of Rav Yosi, who normally allows you to eat all the way to Shabbos and Yontif. And the Mishnah is teaching me a special din on Erev Pesach. Rav Yosi says you're not allowed to. Why? Because of the din of eating the matzah, which is a mitzvah daraisa on the first night. Then we have the second teretz of Rav Papa that he's explaining. We can even go with Rav Yehuda. And the difference is on a regular Erev Shabbos and Yontif, it is forbidden from Samuch. When it comes to, it's forbidden. It's forbidden after Samach. It's mina mincha ulamayla, but Samach is mutter. That half hour earlier in Pesach, you have to start a half hour prior. Ask the Gemara, 6 lines from the bottom. Ube'erev Shabbos Samach lemincha shari. Is that true? V'atan we went to the Brayso Yechladem Erev Shabbos v'yom Tovim mitei shari ulamayla today. You're not allowed to eat from 9 hours into the day and onwards, so that you enter into Shabbos. It's the Shabbos shoot Rav Yehuda. We see Rav Yehuda clearly doesn't say only Samach. We see that Rav Yehuda holds you're not allowed to eat 9 hours and onward on every Erev Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Rav Yosi, says the Gemara, Amar Marzutcha, what are you asking? Again, what was the question? We just answered in every Erev Shabbos, Mimin Cholamayla is forbidden, but Samuch, it's mutter. We just asked on that we see clearly in the Bryce that Samuch is not mutter. Because it says from 9 hours, we see that even within that half hour it's forbidden. Answers the Gemara, with this we're going to conclude, Amar Marzutcha, Man Lima, Lan Dimetaretzta. Who taught you that brisa that you just quoted, the brisa that said you're not allowed to eat from 9 hours and onward, who said that is a good brisa? Moving along to Kofam and Aleph, for us to look out a few lines in, Tilma Mishabashtahi. Maybe that brisa is a mistake, which often we find that in different brisas there were times that they weren't accurate. So you're asking a question, maybe it's incorrect. I went to Yeshiva de Rav Pinchas in Shir, Braid Rav Ami, V'kam, Tana, V'tana Kamei. We learned this brisa. He accepted the brisa. So we see it is an accurate brisa. Says the Gemara, Yachi Kasha. So now it's difficult because now it's a question. Ela machavarta k'de Rav Huna. So the Gemara concludes we must go with the teretz of Rav Huna. The teretz of Rav Huna was the first teretz that we said that we're going with the opinion of Rav Yosi. That on a regular Erev Shabbos and Erev Yontif, Rav Yosi holds you allowed to eat all the way until Shabbos and Yontif. But on Erev Pesach, because of the special mitzvah darais to timatz, the special mitzvah to have taiva, to have an appetite, even Rav Yosi is might, and that's why our parak begins. Arvei Pesachim esamach lemincha. There's a special din that you're not allowed to eat until it gets dark, so that you have an appetite for that matzah. We'll pick up from here in the next year.